Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Sher, and it's time to square off. Let's meet our panel. Jimmy Mathis, thank you so much for filling in for me while I'm going through some issues. I appreciate that. Good to see you. Nicolee, of course, is fabulous, a GOP committeewoman. We have Tonya, Bana, who is an outstanding attorney, and so is Mary Koch. I've got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about Senator Alex Padilla and this situation that happened and played all over the world after it happened. He is the Democratic senior senator from California. He's a vocal critic of President Trump's administration immigration policies. And if you saw the tape, and I'm sure you've seen it by now, he was forcibly removed, handcuffed, as he attempted to question the Kristi Noem, who was the Secretary, of course, of Homeland Security. And it was quite an event. It led to quite a lot of conversation. And Nicolee, what are your thoughts?
Well, my question for the senior senator from California is, what would happen in his office or anywhere in California or anywhere in America if someone tried to rush the podium that he was standing at speaking? How would they be treated? Would security personnel try to stop someone rushing at him at the podium? So I think he was not exactly behavior becoming a senator. I don't think we expect senators to try to take out someone else who's speaking. So I was a little surprised to see that from him.
I don't think that happened. I don't think he rushed the stage. So I don't think that's an issue. He asked a question and he was removed. He didn't make any actions towards Kristi Noem. And so my bigger issue is we have lost, somehow people think that they have a right to make pronouncements and statements and decisions and not be questioned on those. And when they are questioned on those, then somehow the person who is doing the questioning deserves to be either removed or silenced or arrested, whatever it is they choose to do. And that is what it looks like America's turning into.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, this seems like a distraction from what the real conversation is, which is whether the majority of Americans still support Donald Trump's mass deportation efforts. Even with the protest in LA, even here in Baltimore a little bit, with all of the media coverage, with Garcia, with all of this, majority of Americans still support the president on his mass deportations.
Not according to the polls I've seen lately, but go ahead.
It's right above 50%.
And also not the president. I mean, the president himself seems to be backtracking somewhat to the extent he's now acknowledging that maybe we don't need to remove the people who don't have criminal records and are picking our fruit. Maybe we don't need to remove the people who are cleaning his hotels. So, the conversation has definitely evolved. And, we don't have to guess as to what happened at that press conference, Mary. Like, there's video, there's clear audio. Did he step forward? Yes. Did he rush? No, that's a mischaracterization. And, at the end of the day, the American people are going to have to decide whether or not they care about the truth or not. There certainly is a segment of people who just don't care. Like they fully accept the fact that we have an administration that trades in dishonesty, and that's okay with them because they're on board with the agenda. I personally don't care who's in office. If we have an administration that is being dishonest with us, that to me that's a big problem. And I don't think it's a distraction to violate people's First Amendment rights. I don't think that the First Amendment is a distraction. I think it is foundational and critically important, and that it is deeply concerning to me that we're seeing those rights eroded in a variety of ways.
Well, it's nice to see someone on the left suddenly decide that the First Amendment is a good thing, because we have been fighting the left, trying to take away free speech from just about every American. But in terms of how Americans actually feel, Harvard-Harris had a poll come out recently that said 74% of Americans want violent criminal illegals deported, and over 53% of Americans wanted all illegal aliens deported, all, not just criminal. And that is a 17% increase from a few years ago. So I think if people keep so poorly representing the illegal community, you're just going to see those numbers going higher and higher and higher. And for the life of me, I can't understand why people in LA thought it was a good idea to raid the 101 freeway, attack cars, and wave Mexican flags. They are not helping their cause.
No, they're not, Nicolee, and it's just bad optics, right? Because what we're hearing is we're a nation of immigrants. You have people that want to come to America to be Americans. I'm just talking about the optics of it. Then you're waving Mexican flags down the 101, shutting down freeways. It brought back a lot of memories of Freddie Gray when they were shutting down 395 and 83. Tonya, I agree with you. I think when you talk about the immigration issue, most reasonable Americans, once you get rid of the bad players, once you secure the border, these are all parts of the conversation going back to Ronald Reagan that were never actually implemented. Once you actually secure the border, get rid of the bad players, the people that are here, is there a path to citizenship? The kids that came, when they were 3, 4, we can start to have that conversation. But the reality is we're still doing mass deportation of bad players, mainly because you look at what happened under Joe Biden, Barack Obama, DACA, where they were encouraging these people to come across the southern border by the tens of millions. So I hear what you're saying, and I believe most Americans aren't being unreasonable in this. I mean, this has not been dealt with any significance, again, for my entire lifetime.
So Ken, I just have a couple of things to say. So I just want to make an overarching comment about this idea with the Mexican flags. I'm right now in my house in South Jersey. It is a white community. It is pretty much as white can be. I drive down the road. I see Irish flags. I see Italian flags. I see flags of other countries that represent the nationalities of the people that live there. So I'm sorry, everybody does that. That is, people have a right to represent what their nationality, what their nationality is. That's number one. Number two, and I think the important thing is that what everyone is skipping over is not what the ideal is, but what's actually happening. The people who are being picked up and taken I'll give a perfect example. There was a gentleman who was interviewed who is a roofer in Florida who believes, who is strongly behind, deportation of people who are undocumented. And I'm not going to call them illegals. They are undocumented individuals. The fact of the matter is that in that situation, because those people were brown, they were picked up and they were taken out. They were here legally. They had work visas. They were here seeking asylum. They had not committed a crime. Of the 6 people, 4 of them were kept in Florida and 2 were taken to detention centers outside the state of Florida. The problem is not with the idea of deporting people who are criminals. The problem is no one is doing an investigation. People are being, in order to make, to show this picture of I'm strong and I'm doing something. Anybody who happens to be brown, whether they're a citizen of the United States, whether they're here illegally, whether they've committed a crime, they are all swept up and taken, and then they're put in places where they don't have due process and access not only to lawyers, but to their families. That's the problem. So I don't disagree with anything anyone said about issues with the borders, which have been for forever. It's not a Democratic or a Republican problem. It's an overarching problem in this country, and I agree with that. But you cannot, without justification, start sweeping people off the streets and transporting them. And the biggest question I have is, why are you wearing a mask? Because you know what? Police officers in Baltimore City, state troopers in the state of Maryland, they don't drive around with masks on their faces. Why do you have a mask on your face when you're sweeping up these people? Why aren't you asking whether or not they have papers? Why aren't you allowing them to have access to attorneys who can produce the papers so that if you've made a mistake, they can be released?
Well, that's
crazy.
They have a mask on their face because there's a target on their back. And I agree with you, Mary. both parties have been guilty of this, but you got to admit the Democrats through Biden and Obama really throttled this thing up. And this is the problem when you have, and they are illegal. Their first act in this country was an illegal one. It doesn't mean that they're not good people. It doesn't mean that they don't want to better their lives, but they're absolutely illegal. And we have roughly 30 to 40 million of them. So that's the problem. We don't deal with this with any sincerity for decades.
Here's my question. Why are we not going after then all of the employers? There's no reason for people to come to the United States for jobs if people aren't employing them. So the question becomes, why is it we're always taking this person? I mean, they literally chase somebody in a strawberry field. How many people, how many Americans are clamoring to have that job to go to a farm and pick strawberries?
I agree with you, Mary. I agree with you. I agree with you with the employer part of it, but it's also very disingenuous when you have a federal government that is saying, come here, our doors are open, inviting them across the border, asking Mexico to violate basic immigration policy. I agree with you on the employer part, but again, this all started at the federal level through DACA, mainly recently, inviting all these people over.
DACA did not invite people. DACA was a way to citizenship for people who had already been here. That's number one. Number two, there is one other thing I want to say too. I'll give you the perfect example of the immigration issue. Andy Harris, Mr. Anti-Immigration. You know what? He was all behind revoking all the visas until he realized that in his own district, if they didn't allow immigrants to come in and pick the crabs, that they were not going to have any kind of crab industry on the Eastern Shore. So all of a sudden he was like, no immigration in the United States. Oh, except for in my district, because I might get my rear end voted out if I don't allow them to bring in the immigrants needed in order to run the crab industry, in order to
You're conflating a whole bunch of issues, but number one, since the era of Jimmy Carter, I used to work at the U.S. Labor Department, everyone has said, we need more worker visas. Yes, we need more worker visas, but guess what? The Democrats on the Hill constantly held that hostage because they wanted amnesty for all other illegals. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the reason agents are wearing masks is because even Hakeem Jeffries, as recently as this week, stood at a podium at the U.S. House of Representatives and said he would dox our law enforcement officials. That means get them killed by cartels, not just get them killed, get their families killed. So it is disgusting that we have any leader of any party, but in this case, the Democrats, saying that law enforcement agents should be doxxed and essentially their families should be killed, because that's exactly the result of that. So what I would suggest Democrats do is realize that no one, Americans, Democrats included, do not want violent criminal illegal aliens roaming the streets, as is what happened when, with search warrants, authorized, signed, judge-signed search warrants, raided a facility that was hosting criminal activity in LA last Friday. And the Democrats in California decided, oh no, we can't give law enforcement backup to any of this.
We're going to stop for a moment. This is a great discussion. Tonya, you left during Nicolee's comment, so we'll come back to you right after we meet again. The voice of Squirrel. Here's Howard Mallison.
Thank you, Richard. You know, the law firm of Barry Glazer specializes in personal injury, medical malpractice, and nursing home neglect. His creative TV commercials have made him very recognizable because Barry tells it like it is. You know, Barry and his team have an in-house doctor and nurse on staff. In fact, you should be calling Barry before you call any insurance company. Barry gets you top dollar. He's that good. Give the law firm of Barry Glazer a call at 410-547-8568 and let them know you heard about them on Square Off. And you know, with so many cars on the road and distracted drivers everywhere, auto accidents will happen. And if you've experienced an accident, the insurance companies can't tell you where to take your car. That's why more and more drivers are trusting their auto repairs and maintenance to leading edge auto body and mechanical repair. They work on all makes and models and offer free pickup and delivery anywhere in the Baltimore area. So give them a call at 410-443-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in the heart of Mount Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. Now back to you, Rich.
Wait a minute, Howard. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Come back.
Come back. Yes.
Where are your eyeglasses?
I had cataract surgery and I don't need them anymore.
Just remember, if something goes wrong with your cataracts, go to Leading Edge. auto reply.
Well, then I will take my cataracts to the leading edge. Bye.
Edge. Here again, ladies and gentlemen, fabulous Tonya Bana. What made you laugh?
Well, I just think it's curious that Nicolee would prefer to talk about things that happened a generation ago rather than talk about what's actually happening
this week.
Can you please be respectful? I didn't interrupt you at all, and I won't. Please let me finish.
All right, next.
And I think it's quite interesting that Nicolee would prefer to talk about other administrations that are not in office right now, rather than talk about what's actually happening right now. I've not seen anyone launch a protest for rapists and murderers. I have seen people launching protests for members of the community who have been here forever, who may not be properly documented yet, but are good people with no criminal record. That is the issue. The issue is the violence and the trauma and the unnecessary fear that the administration is instilling in Black and brown communities because of these Gestapo-esque tactics. It is scary when unidentified people with no clothing or badges of any kind identifying who they are, with masks, pull out of an unmarked car and pull people out. It looks like a kidnapping. And quite frankly, if someone did that to me and my husband, we would defend ourselves. I'm surprised no one has killed one of these ICE agents. And I'm not advocating for violence, but it is terrifying. Ask yourself, would you be comfortable with some unidentified person, a group of people pulling up in an unmarked vehicle with a mask on and violently pulling you and your family out of a car? I don't know anyone who would be okay with that. Yeah. That doesn't have to be done that way. And the fact that it is being done that way is why people think that this is all political theater to justify eroding our civil liberties.
But that's not the norm on this, okay, Tonya? And what Nicolee was saying is true. A lot of these bad players, there's warrants out for the arrest. They should have been deported a long time ago. You're acting like they're just going through grocery stores and strawberry fields, picking up innocent people all the time. Yes, there is some collateral damage to this. I'm not minimalizing, and I'm definitely not defending it. This is the problem when you have 40 million illegal people in this country trying to siphon through it. But you're acting like, that is the norm, and that's very disingenuous.
So
there's a lot of footage.
There's always been a saying in this, at least in the legal community, and especially as relates to sort of criminal law, that better 100 guilty men go free than one not guilty person be incarcerated. What I have a problem with is that there's attacks on all fronts as this is going on. There are things that need to be done, and I agree with you. People who are violent criminals should be removed, no questions asked. There's a process for that. You get warrants, you get them arrested, you remove them from the country. And I agree with Tonya. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But you cannot. The problem I have is that we have a constitution that protects all of the people who are on American soil. To behave that way and to ignore the Constitution, and then at the same time to have your spokesperson literally stand in front of the press and in front of America and say that the office of the president holds more power and more authority than the other two co-equal branches of government. It's happening on all fronts. It's not one thing in isolation. It's all of these things that are happening every day that attack our rights. And you know what? A lot of people might be okay with it right now because it's not them. But the problem becomes, wait a minute, let me finish. But the problem becomes, it never just stops at that. What happens if the next administration that gets in doesn't like white people from Nevada, doesn't like, white people in general, and they start just loading them up and arresting them for no reason without probable cause? This is what happens when we don't have a free press, when we don't have due process, when we don't, when we suspend habeas corpus. Those things protect all of us, not just some of us. And we can't say it's okay to ignore the Constitution over here and not over there. And that's the problem I have as a citizen. I have no problem with government doing their job, but I do have a problem when they do it in this way.
But the problem is everything you are advocating for is giving super rights to violent criminal illegal aliens. That is why 74% of Americans want violent criminal illegal aliens deported. It is because this government, whether it was under Joe Biden first Trump administration, Barack Obama, however we got to the point where we have 20 to 40 million illegal aliens in this country, it is why a majority of Americans now want them removed, even if they're not violent, because they have been given super rights.
No.
Because if you or I killed someone and
Right.
was sent to or human trafficked for 10 years, as was documented in Brigo Garcia's case, would Senator Van Hollen come visit us in a foreign country because we human trafficked for 10 years in the United States?
So
No,
first of
that
all,
is civil rights, and no U.S. citizen would be given all these get out of jail free cards and have Democrat leadership advocating for them. Democrats need to get with the program and understand no one should have super rights over U.S. citizens.
okay, the Constitution is not a super right. Due process.
You're not talking this
Will you
Constitution.
stop interrupting?
We're
Will
talking
you just
not
stop
following the
interrupting?
Constitution.
You please stop. You filibuster and then you interrupt. So can I just say my piece?
Please.
So my piece is the following. The Constitution is not, due process is not a super right. Due process is what's owed to everyone. You're talking about Garcia as if he has been proven in a court of law to have committed those offenses that you are alleging. He has not been convicted of anything in a court of law. They are nothing more than allegations. Allegations are allegations.
Yep.
Anyone can, okay.
He had 2
Nicolee.
deportation orders. There's
Hold
10 years of documentation of him
Deportation
human
orders.
trafficking.
Hold it.
Deportation orders are not criminal convictions. Talk about conflating. Criminal convictions are when you have been arrested as a result of probable cause, you have had a trial by jury, and you have been determined beyond a reasonable doubt to have committed a crime. You have availed yourself of the appellate rights that every citizen has, and after the appellate process is run out, you have been determined to be guilty.
Yeah,
But the fact that some immigration judge on a lesser standard has determined that you are eligible for deportation is a vastly different issue than a criminal conviction.
No, it's Mary. That's the whole. No, that's the whole point. Okay, is that they're not enforcing the deportation orders. If he wasn't here, none of these subsequent conversations would be happening. This is the whole point: is that they're not enforcing the deportation orders. He had 2 of them, so it's like, yeah, that's not a real crime, right? Yeah, you can get by with that. And now we're talking about due process. And by the way, I understand both you guys on what the Supreme Court ruled on. Okay, I don't believe that's what's in the Constitution. And just because you have a black robe, the Supreme Court's got it wrong before. Okay, so I'm a novice when I think, respectfully, I think the Supreme Court got that ruling wrong. I know they ruled on it, but he should have been deported twice.
May I?
But that's not what Nicolee said. Nicolee didn't say he had 2 deportations. She said he had been convicted of trafficking. Okay, there was an issue with the deportation order, and the deportation order was he was not to be deported back to El Salvador. It was clear. It was 100% clear. The Trump administration acknowledged it, and then they fired the lawyer in the Justice Department that acknowledged it.
That is not correct. He had 2 deportation orders, and that's exactly what I was talking about.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hear me. Good. I'm Richard Sher. Welcome to Squirrel. This has been and is continuing to be one of the most lively discussions we've ever had on this program. But here's the voice of Squirrel of Howard Mallison again with a little bit more about our sponsors. Howard.
Thank you, Rich. Dr. Kelly Gagan is a well-respected, board-certified podiatrist and heel specialist. You know, foot problems can happen at any age, and Dr. Gagan knows that the appearance of your feet matter just as much as correcting any problem you may be experiencing. And if unsightly toenails embarrass you to wear sandals or open-toed shoes, you could be a candidate for laser treatments that solve this issue. They're safe, painless, and go right to the cause. And believe me, over-the-counter treatments don't work. So give Dr. Gagan a call at 410-753-4422 to set up an appointment. And you know, Baltimore is a great diner town, and the Double T Diners are always voted #1 in reader polls. TT stands for totally terrific. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you can't beat the enormous menu selections that will bring you back again and again. There's Double T locations on Route 40 West, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Bel Air, Laurel, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, try By the Docks in Middle River for their Monday night lobster special. All part of the Double T family. Tell them you heard about them on Square Off. And back to you, Rich.
All right, guys, listen, please be respectful, if you will, and don't interrupt if you can help it. All right. Go ahead, Mary.
So I want to say a couple of things about the Abrego case. So first of all, Abrego Garcia. First of all, I would say that you lose credibility when you have your own Justice Department attorney come in and say that what the administration has done is illegal. You lose credibility when for months you stonewall, you don't bring the person back to the United States. When you finally do bring the person back to the United States, you charge them with crimes, not in the district where they live, but in the District of Tennessee, which happens to be as red as can be. And then on top of that, from that district, from that U.S. Attorney's Office in that district, you have one of the, I believe he was a deputy, resign because of the political manipulations that were occurring as references that particular defendant and those particular charges. So I see you smiling, but I have to say to you that when you have something legitimate, you hit it head on. If there was something there, it should have been presented to the judges that were in either Judge Zini's in the federal court. It was not. She asked the government time and time and time again for the evidence, for the information, and they refused to produce it. And they refused to bring him back into this country until they indicted him. And maybe it's all true. I don't know. I haven't seen the files. I haven't seen the evidence. Maybe it's all true. But the fact of the matter is that the way that this was handled, there's something in the law called the smell test, and this doesn't pass it.
So there's actually a lot of fantastic legal filings on this, and I'm sorry that the career attorney was not prepared when he went to court. But I don't know if you know, but Abrego Garcia's partner, his boss, the person whose truck he was driving through Tennessee when he got pulled over for one of his many human trafficking excursions, rolled on him and talked about how they both human trafficked for over 10 years throughout the country. And, I'm guessing human trafficking is the tip of it because, as we know, there's generally quite a bit of sex trafficking involved there. So there are reams of documentation about this. I've reviewed quite a bit of it myself. It is out there for anyone to find. And once again, I'm sorry that the career attorney hadn't done his homework, hadn't pulled all this very basic information. But these are court documents going back several years documenting this 10 years of human trafficking with these gentlemen.
Mary,
I just want to say no one from the Justice Department produced that information. Not just that one attorney. No one from the Justice Department.
Oh, I think they all have. Yeah.
The things where you brought before the break on suspending writ of habeas corpus, due process, co-equal branches of government. We've known each other long enough to know that I'm going to have your back every single time on that. Just talking about the politics, remove the actual facts of this case out of the equation for a second. I just find it fascinating that the Democrats want to use this as the hill that they want to die on, that they want to use this as the example of where the Trump administration went awry. Of all the tens of thousands of arrests that have been made by ICE, this is the one that Van Hollen wants to hold on to. So I'm just talking about the politics of this, not the civil liberties, of this one individual. I find that fascinating.
Well, I think that, so let me just say, if I can, I'm sorry, Richard, I just want to respond very quickly. I think that the issue that a lot of the politicians had about this was the Trump administration ignoring an edict of the Supreme Court. I think that the problem with that case, like there may be all of these facts that Nicolee is talking about. None of those came out in all the time that there was the back and forth when he was still in El Salvador. I think that what people have latched onto is the idea that a federal district court made an order. It was appealed up to the Supreme Court. That order was upheld by the Supreme Court, and then it was ignored by the Trump administration. And that is the precipice of constitutional crisis, which is why I think, whether you agree or he's a savory or unsavory character, that's why this has captured the attention of politicians.
Tonya, quickly.
It's the principle, not the person.
Jimmy.
Yeah, again, I'm just talking about the politics of it. And look, Mary, I am with you on the co-equal branches of government. Okay, this was one of my biggest complaints under Obama. And it's not unique to him. Okay, these branches are co-equal as long as the other branches hold them accountable. Okay, the Constitution is only as strong as the men and women within these individual branches that enforce it. So I'm not going to argue that fact with you because I absolutely agree. And this is my issue with the Supreme Court's the end-all be-all. It's one co-equal branch of government. The Supreme Court, again, gets things wrong. They got Dred Scott wrong. We can all agree on that. So that's when it comes to the responsibility of Congress and the House, why they have the purse. All these branches have to hold each other accountable. I agree with you 1,000% on that no one branch is more powerful than the next.
Well, as you know, the big parade is coming up, and we'll see what becomes of that. I did want to talk a second, because we're running out of time. We're out of time. That State's Attorney Ivan Bates and Mayor Brandon Scott are feuding again, each of them taking credit for the significant drop in violence in Baltimore City. Any final comments on that? Because
yeah, absolutely. Brandon Scott has been consistent. Brandon Scott has been a disaster as a mayor. Marilyn Mosby was a disaster. Ivan Bates has been a great city state's attorney. That is the defining change of when things changed. It was a narrative. It's the way that he has done his job. I think he's been a great city state's attorney. I got a lot of respect for him, and I'm glad to have him as the city state's attorney.
I really like Ivan. I will just make one political comment. You can own the success, but you better be ready to own the failure.
You got it. I agree with you. You're right.
And can I just say, look at this as a math equation. There's only one factor that changed when Baltimore City's crime rate started to go down, and that was the entrance of Ivan Bates. So I'm confused that the mayor is suddenly claiming credit for this when he was there when it was at its height.
hey,
we have unanimous opinions on this one issue. Great job, guys.
this was a terrific exchange. Loved it. Loved it. I hope you all enjoyed it at home, and that you'll join us again next week when once again we square off. Now go fight each other.
Have a good weekend.
There you go.